Hi folks, it's Andy and welcome to today's Kendo rant. Let's get straight to the questions, eh? Okay. This is a good question. Hi Andy, thanks for the videos, great content as always, thank you very much, I'm glad you're watching. One question about refereeing, this is a great question. To my experience, Shimpan and competitors tend to be clustered in well-distincted age categories. In fact, it usually happens that retired competitors become referees. However, Kendo is continuously evolving, and as a result, into evidence that the Kendo today's referees learned 30 years ago is somehow different to what competitors are doing now. This sometimes leads to different core beliefs about Yuko Datotsu, resulting in tensions between them. In other words, Yuko Datotsu being what counts as a valid point. Furthermore, this interesting neuroscience article points out how elite practitioners are selectively better in understanding the predicting specific actions compared to expert observers who have little or no experience in performing that specific action, whose understanding and prediction performance was similar to naive observers and practitioners. To sum up, shouldn't the turnover between competitors and Shimpan be more open and fluid rather than having so closed categories? Thanks. Okay. Great question. I think if I understand the question correctly, and let me know if I don't, but what you're saying is that basically Kendo is sort of constantly evolving. The Kendo, that if you watch a video of the All Japan Championships from 30 years ago and one today, the Kendo itself looks quite different. If you go even back further, it looks even more different still. And that is indeed true. So if you have somebody that was a competitor 30 years ago refereeing the tournament of today, their understanding of Yuko Datotsu might be different. Yuko Datotsu being a valid strike. Their sort of impressions of Kendo and stuff might be different. And shouldn't it be sort of more fluid? Secondly, your point about the neuroscience article, I haven't read it, I'm afraid I haven't had time, but I think what you're saying is that elite practitioners, so elite competitors in Kendo, for example, will be better at recognising elite points because they've had the experience of it rather than people that haven't got the experience of doing that. So yeah, that's an interesting question. So okay, here's how it goes in my opinion. There's a grading question actually just about this. I think I've got the book here. It's in here. It's about the this is the book for the when you do a grading exam for the first dan to fifth dan, you have to do a written test. And in Japan, these are the questions that you get asked. It's always one of the questions from this book, one or two of the questions from this book, and you have to write the same answer that's in this book as well. You're expected to write the same answer. You're not allowed to give your opinion. All right. So if you give a different answer to what's written in here, even on something subjective like you know, describe Yuko Datotsu or something. I don't know if that's a question in here, but you know, if you give a different answer, then they fail you, basically. So a question. I got one of these questions on my my fifth dan exam, which is why I remember it, and it's this one here. It's obviously all written in Japanese because it's for the Japanese market, but the question itself is kind of things that Shimpan should be aware of. You have to list of things that Shimpan have to be aware of, have to do, and it goes through things like they have to be fair, they have to understand the rules, and make sure that they implement them properly, and they've got to be healthy is one of the things. They have to know the actual methods of Shimpan. So, you know, like the way you hold the flags and stuff, which is on the next page. And one of them actually says that they have to be kind of accomplished Kendo practitioners themselves. There's sort of, I'm not going through it all now, but basically it's essentially the idea is that to be able to do Shimpan, you also have to be practicing Kendo. You can't just do Shimpan. You have to be an active Kendo practitioner, and ideally you have to have competed. So that's one of the things. I mean, yes, in terms of how it changes over the years. Now, the thing is the criteria for Yuko Datotsu is kind of constant. All right, so yeah, some things change in terms of the evolution of the way Kendo is done, but actually those criteria for Yuko Datotsu, they don't change. So even if you look at something 30 years ago or 50 years ago, when you see it, it's not that you see something that wouldn't be awarded Yuko Datotsu by today's standard, because the elements of it are still there. It's not that their Kendo is different, so their criteria for Yuko Datotsu is different. It's just that the methods to achieve those criteria of Yuko Datotsu is constantly evolving. But the actual result, the actual Yuko Datotsu is still being achieved. So even if it's a person that's learned Kendo, was taught Kendo many years ago, and their sort of understanding of Yuko Datotsu is sort of from longer ago, then in theory, then it shouldn't matter. Now, here's where it gets difficult. Now, what I'm talking about is Kendo in Japan, because in Japan, they've obviously got a lot more people. There is a higher turnover of referees. If you look at the people that are refereeing the All Japan Championships now, they're not, it's not like it was, no, it's not like it was, but that turnover of people, the same people aren't refereeing it now that were refereeing it 10 years ago. Yeah, they're younger, younger people. It's not that they're getting younger, it's just that turnover is happening. However, having said that, the difficulty you have, and this is something I've certainly noticed, is outside of Japan, especially where Kendo is less popular in Europe, or probably in, I assume they have a similar sort of issue in other parts of the world as well. But this could be quite controversial now, I don't want to upset anyone, but the problem is that you have people now that are very senior who had a much sort of more difficult time of learning the basics of Kendo, or learning or getting an understanding of Yuko Datotsu. So their actual understanding of Yuko Datotsu probably wasn't put to them properly in the first place, because the information wasn't available like it is now. And especially, they may have even learned from Japanese teachers, but you don't acquire an understanding of Yuko Datotsu, this is my theory, just from listening to one teacher. It has to be something you have to acquire yourself through constant practice and through the right environment. And I've already talked about how important Mitori Geiko is in terms of watching other practitioners to make sure that you're understanding what Yuko Datotsu really should be. So they might have had a really good sensei from years ago, but you can't just get that understanding from one person. It has to come from an entire community. So yeah, I think it can be very difficult, especially for higher level people in different countries outside of Japan that have been practicing Kendo for a long time. Sometimes, yeah, it does feel like they have a slightly irregular. I'm trying to be kind of non-inflammatory with the way I'm selecting these words here, but a slightly unusual or irregular concept or criteria for Yuko Datotsu doesn't mean that they're necessarily wrong, but they don't necessarily understand it in the same way as it's understood in Japan. So it is often it often happens that Japanese people come outside of Japan, they come to visit different places, and then they're kind of very puzzled by the experiences they have in the Shiai, because the criteria for Yuko Datotsu is a little bit different to how it is back home. Because, like you say, those Shimpan probably learned Kendo many years ago, and their accrual of the understanding of Yuko Datotsu has come through a different route. So it's not a direct criticism of those people, of course. You have to still be grateful for the fact that they're even have put their lives into Kendo in that country. So I have to appreciate that as well. In terms of what can be done about it, I mean, it's patience, unfortunately. It's all about patience. You have to wait because it's the younger generation or the newer people that have now, we're starting to get more and more closer to the understanding of Yuko Datotsu as it is in Japan, outside of Japan. And those people who are now carrying that understanding or achieving that understanding are going to become the next generation of Shimpan. which essentially will improve the overall quality of Shiai and the quality of Kendo in the entire region. But that's a natural evolution. It's a natural progression. So it's a good thing. And like I say, I don't mean that in a derogatory way towards the current sort of old guard or the current sort of crop of teachers that are a little bit sort of more experienced. It's just how it is, frankly. So I hope that makes sense. And in terms of talking about how elite practitioners are better at understanding their specific actions compared to observers that have no experience of performing that action, yes, to some extent, yes, that kind of makes sense. But that isn't to say that you have to be able to do every waza in order to judge it yuko or not, to judge it valid or not. You have to understand the criteria for what a point makes. What makes a point, sorry. It's a lot like somebody's commented underneath, actually. There's other comments underneath this talking about the Shimpan not being well trained in other kamae like Jordan or different techniques, but they don't need to be trained in Jordan. You don't need to be good at Jordan to be able to judge the Jordan points. It's like you don't have to be good at Jordan to actually understand how Jordan works. Most brilliant Jordan teachers, most brilliant Jordan practitioners in Japan were taught by people who probably didn't do Jordan themselves. So it doesn't necessarily mean that you have to do it yourself, but you definitely have to be practicing Kendo, and you have to have an advanced understanding of Kendo, and you have to have developed a strong kind of interpretation of the criteria of Yuko Dototsu in order to be able to do Shimpan at all. If you don't do those things, then, and you'll only acquire that understanding of Yuko Dototsu by participating in Kendo practice and as well as Shiai, really. So yeah, that's my take on that. Hope it makes sense. This is a comment on an older video, one of the videos that I made about, it's not a Kendo rant video, it's a comment on a, what do you call it, a KendoStar, not KendoStar, the Kendo Show episode about Reiho, about the manners in Kendo. And it says, thanks for the video, it's very instructive. I have a question that no one seems to be able to answer. We bow before and after practicing with someone, but I've noticed that some people bow right before they rotate. Is this correct? Okay, it's not incorrect, all right? The Reiho in Kendo specifically says we bow to our opponent before and after we've done an exercise or a match or something. But in terms of, I know what you mean. You do an exercise, whatever, you finish, you do Sonkyo, what have you, stand up, go back, bow, and then listen to hear what teacher's going to say, says move around, and we bow again and we start to move. It's just a kind of little manners thing. You don't have to do it. Some people do it, some people don't. There's nothing wrong with doing it. It's just a light-hearted kind of oh, thanks again sort of thing. That's it. It's nothing you need to worry about too much. Okay. Thanks for the video. I have a very beginner-orientated question. How would you go about telling what Kendo is to a person who's potentially interested in joining your club? What would you tell them if they ask about the spiritual character development that Kendo brings? How would you go about it without sounding, I don't know, somewhat pretentious and like you're fanatic of some sort of Kendo church, without going into too much terminology and deep principles? Right. So the first thing is, if somebody who's interested in joining the club and saying, "Oh, what's this Kendo all about?" Then I shouldn't say dumb. It doesn't mean dumb, but like you know, I'd draw back on the kind of depth of it, and I'd just say, look, it's like a Japanese, and this is what I normally say, it's a Japanese form of fencing. It's a bit like fencing, but it's the Japanese version. Why don't you come and give it a try, see if it's for you? And I'd sort of just leave it at that. If they start asking more questions about it, of course, I'd answer them. And if they're saying like, well, what about, will it make me better at sword fighting? If they ask me that, well, you know what I think about that. But if they ask me if, you know, well, what about its spiritual and character development? Does it help with that? If they're asking about that, then I'd say, yeah, actually it really does. There's loads of things about Kendo that, you know, it's more about overcoming yourself and your own issues or your own kind of worries or the things that, you know, the barriers that you put up within yourself. It's really more about that than it is than anything else. So it's great for personal development. It really helps you out in everyday life. It certainly helped me and everybody else at the club. And it's really fun, and you get to meet loads of great people and make new friends. So yeah, come and give it a try. I think I'd just put it something like that. I wouldn't start going into saying, well, actually the concept of Kendo is the Kendo no Rinen and stuff like this, because they're not ready for that. They're not primed for it. You just need to, you know, get them to realize that, you know, Kendo is it's fun and it's good for you in lots of ways. And you know, there's a load of great benefits to practicing Kendo. And if you can put that across, that's all that matters. Like I say, when I put it across as like a Japanese kind of fencing, is what I say. I don't think of it like that really. Yeah, I don't think of it as comparable to fencing, but the person that's never done Kendo before, that has no idea what it is, it's the easiest way for them to relate to it. And I want them to, you'll never be able to explain what Kendo is to somebody without them giving it a try, not properly. So my idea, my sort of idea is to just talk to them and say, yeah, well, it's kind of like fencing, but it's sort of the Japanese version, so it's quite a bit different. You know, it's not like anything else you've probably tried before, so why don't you come and give it a go? And I'd just go with that, to be honest. Next question. Why isn't Kendo supposed to be about swordsmanship? I don't get that argument. Is it completely divorced from it or what? Go and watch the other videos. Not just not the one you commented on is the different kamae and practice video, but I'm pretty sure I've talked about that now in about 3 different videos, and I don't want to open that can of worms again. So yeah, sorry, I'm going to leave that there and just go and watch the other Kendo rant videos. I'm sure I've talked about it quite a lot. Okay, next one. I'm not going to read your name out just for the sake of privacy, but hi Andy, it's me from the Facebook group. Our club is lucky enough to be graced with the presence of the 7th Dan from Tokyo for the next 3 or 4 years. He's perfectly fluent in English and a kind, soft-spoken gentleman who just wants to train with us and no plan to take control of the sessions he attends. We're a small club with 2 third, myself included, and 1 4th Dan teachers. What should we know to apply in terms of etiquette and behaviour to make the most of his time with us and for him to enjoy it? First thing I'd do is I'd try and talk to him and ask him to, if he doesn't mind, to help more with, I know he says he's not got the intention of taking control of the sessions, but I'd be kind of really open to asking him for his input, asking him how he thinks you should practice for what you want from the club. Because it'd be a real shame to you know, not have that, what can I say, that sort of benefit from such a high level teacher. So I'm just plugging my phone in because I'm running out of batteries. To have such a high level teacher come and not kind of get their input on your actual sessions. In terms of etiquette, make sure you sat on the teacher's side, of course, on the sensei side. And other than that, I think you should just try and make him feel like he's going to, you know, like it's open and that he's very welcome. And make sure you do your best to practice with him. When you do practice with him, give him everything you can. Do your best. Try to. That doesn't mean try to beat him. It doesn't mean try to beat him, because that's not going to get you anything out of the keiko. You should try and do your best kendo against him. Otherwise, just try and, yeah, I mean, if you have like if you go to the pub or something after kendo, if you go for drinks or something, make sure you invite him along, see if you can get him to come along, stuff like that. And I'm sure he'll have a great time. I'm sure he'll absolutely love it. I'm sure he will. I'm sure there's nothing to worry about. Okay, but great. It's great to hear that he's coming. Will you do a show on Kihon Kendo Kata? I'm guessing you mean the Bokuto ni yoru Kihon waza keiko ho. Maybe, maybe. If enough people ask me to do it, then yeah, of course I'll do it. I'm not sure if it's like a top priority, because it's not a difficult set of kata. But yeah, okay, maybe I'll put it on the list of things that I'll do at some point. Okay, last one. Hi Andy, a bit of weird questions here. One, on rare occasion, I managed to land a strike at the moment. I see an opening, but it's kind of a surprise for me. Yeah, I've done that before. Usually the strikes are good, but I'm caught off guard and just as equally surprised as my opponent. Therefore, I'm unable to do proper Zanshin. Is there a way to overcome this? 2, when tired, usually happens at the end of Keiko, my strikes become monotonous and predictable. They lack sharpness, and I do bigger swings. Is there a way or method to keep my strikes short and sharp even when super tired? Right. Part 1. Hitting and not realising, but being sort of surprising yourself with your own hits. It happens to us all, of course, but certainly at sort of lower levels, I don't think I do that. I can't remember the last time I've done it. It was kind of, well, I think I did do it around sort of 2nd, 3rd dan level. Right, how do you stop doing it? First, you need to do more kakari-geiko. Seems to be my answer to everything, but doing more kakari-geiko will help that, because if you're doing kakari-geiko, then every time you attack, you'll attack with Zanshin. Well, Zanshin isn't. It's not really Zanshin, is it? It's more like a kime, but still, you'll attack full on with Stemi, Kime, Zanshin every time, whether you hit or miss. Kind of, it's a mental issue in a way, because you're kind of hesitant before you strike. So you have to be a little bit more determined in the strikes that you make. So there's no point attacking if you don't know if you're going to hit or not. You shouldn't be chancing your shots. So when you attack, attack with conviction and be sure that your strike will land. If it doesn't, then deal with it later. But what's happening is your heart's not in it. So it's like, I'll give this a shot, I'll give this a go, and then it's not working out. And about being tired and keeping your strikes short and sharp, sorry mate, that's just practice. It's just going to be more and more repetition, more practice and practice, and then it's going to be muscle memory. So even when you're tired, your body sort of acts on its own. It's always going to happen. It happens to all of us, right? If you're really tired, then yeah, some of your form sort of goes out of the window. Especially the sharpness is one of the things that goes. But with more practice and a little bit more stamina, but especially more practice, like I say, it's a muscle memory thing, and then I think you'll find that sort of gets a bit better. Okay, so that'll do for that. I'm gonna have to go now because I've got practice tonight myself. So I'll see you all in the next video. Hope you enjoyed.